Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Q&A for the short film Last Days at Paradise High. My name is Joanne Parkerson. I am the Director of Education for the California Film Institute. My pronouns are she and her. I am a white, middle-aged woman with round, dark-rimmed glasses and short, light brown curly hair. I'm wearing a black t-shirt and a gray cardigan, sitting in a home office with a bookshelf on one side of me and a printer and a vase of orange flowers on the other. It is my great pleasure to welcome our very special guests, our whole crew from the film. First, I'd like to introduce the directors. Let's start with Emily Thomas. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Emily Thomas. I'm a 30-something white woman with dark hair, and I'm in a room with pink walls and some artwork in the background.
Welcome, Emily. And Derek.
Yeah, hi, Derek Knowles. I'm a white male sitting in a kitchen, some white walls. I have a great horned owl hat on and blonde hair, and excited to be here with everyone else.
Great. And our wonderful film subjects. Let's start with Virginia.
I'm Virginia Partain. I'm a 67-year-old woman, white woman with purple and gray hair, and I have a cat sitting on the back of my chair right now.
And Kody.
My name's Kody. I'm a 20-year-old white male. I'm wearing a racing shirt, and I'm in my aunt's living room. So it's
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Kody. And Harmony.
My name is Harmony von Stockhausen. I'm a 19-year-old Indonesian female with curly dark hair and a white shirt and a brown sweater.
Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here this morning. And I'd also like to thank, of course, Gina, our ASL interpreter, for joining us as well. So thank you so much for being here, Gina. So just to start off, Emily and Derek, did you guys have a connection to Paradise before you made this film?
So we are both from the Northern California area, and so I was living in the Oakland at the time, and we were in kind of with a 2-hour radius of the fires, and so we get a little downwind smoke from the wildfires up there. And when we saw what was happening in the news, I went up there and met Virginia on the first day of back to school, and they were briefly in a mall at one point for school. And when I met Virginia, we had a really emotional conversation, and I knew that there was an important story here just through the lens of the high school to tell about how you move on from something like this. And then through that, Derek and I met Kody and Harmony, and learned about their amazing stories as well.
Derek, did you have any, other than, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, that's a good sort of summary. I'll just add that, yeah, my mom lives in Sonoma County, and so I had, before making this film, made another film about the experience that kind of that community went through in the sort of big fires in 2017. And yeah, so I think, to Emily's point, we were, just a reality of life here in California now, that fires and kind of climate disaster is something that we're now, sadly living with. And so, yeah, so we weren't familiar with Paradise, in particular, but it kind of felt like the stories that are, for all communities across Northern California kind of rhyme with each other now.
And did you always intend to focus just on the school community? Were you ever interested in the, because I've seen some other film, and that kind of the whole town, but that it's what's I think so great and interesting about this film is your very specific focus on, the students and teachers at Paradise High. Was that always your plan?
Well, yeah, Emily had really made the foray into meeting Virginia and just sort of like finding that point of entry into the story, which I think we both found really appealing. We were 10 years out of high school at that point, but it wasn't so long ago that we couldn't kind of remember what it felt like, I guess, to be on the cusp of adulthood and leaving home. And I think that was really a strong connection for us. And And Joanne, to your point, there were several other films being made about, Paradise after the fire at the time, and we kind of figured that we wanted to like zag while everyone else was maybe zigging in sort of telling a more maybe less conventional story about what had happened.
So Harmony, Kody, and Virginia, how did you guys, a lot of people in the film mentioned how, it felt like the media kind of descended on the town, there was a lot of cameras around, a lot of coverage, and that it felt, in some ways like people just wanted the story and then were leaving. And, so I'm just wondering what felt different about making this film and how you felt about participating it, and particularly, I guess, Virginia, when you first met Emily, and and I guess how any of you decided that this was something that you felt comfortable with, as opposed to the type of coverage that you might have been getting from like television news.
I had been connected to CBS Evening News had come and followed me, but it was fast, it was intense, it was news. With Emily, it was a personal connection. Like Emily was a person caring about me as a person. She wanted to know my story. Same with Derek. Like when they came, it was, what is your story? Not what's the media's story? What's going to be sensational? What's real about you and this situation? And for me, Harmony and Kody were both my students, and they were people who I knew what they had been through too. We went through this together, and it was the fact that they cared about all of us as human beings and what my seniors lost that year. Your senior year, you wait all those years to have that senior year, and it just gets ripped away from you. And so I felt like they were reaching this story with heart. And that to me was the most important thing.
Kody and Harmony?
I was just gonna say I really agree with Partain about how Emily and Derek really looked at you as a person and they actually cared about you. Like they were kind of like my uncle and aunt that would just follow me around my senior year, and they've seen me. I mean, they've really seen who I am and not just level stuff. So I think it was really nice creating a bond with them as well.
How about for you, Kody?
I agree. Having both Emily and Derek come to the high school and share some of their own experiences with what we've just experienced it was a lot easier to handle than just someone going, "Hey, what happened to you guys? Yeah, your town burned down. What happened?"
Right.
So
Right.
I really felt a better connection. Like Derek even spent a couple nights at my house and met my parents and my family. So it really draws closer bonds than just a story.
And how do you guys feel about the film now that it's completed? How does it resonate for you?
Who's gonna go first?
I still haven't watched it.
By the
You
way,
haven't watched it, Kody?
they do refer to me as Partain. That's an affectionate name.
I figured.
Instead of calling me that, I get called a lot of Patain, Mama Patain, a lot of different names. But for me, I see it and I see my pain and I see my brokenness at that time. And I'm so different now. The healing's been going on. I sought out therapy because of what I went through. But I see my brokenness when I look at it, and I feel like, wow, they saw into my soul. But the other thing is I also see my students' resilience and that incredible change that they went through. I see what we put together from our brokenness. We created this amazing, unique experience in what we called the airport school, because it was across the street from the airport. And I created a Bedouin tent in the middle of all these like weird, everybody had these partitions that looked like an office, and I went and draped, these Indian print big old bedspreads and created this like real unique place for my students to feel like they were back in my classroom with lots of my artwork up, and because I give away my artwork to my students. Anyway, it was, watching the transformation was really amazing. And for me, it makes me cry because that was my last day of teaching.
Right.
Is on that film. So sorry, I get emotional. I love teaching. And so it was hard to say goodbye to teaching, but I'm really glad because COVID hit right after that. And I'm somebody who's a real hands-on teacher. I like interacting with students. I would not have liked Zooming my education. So anyway, that's me.
Harmony, how do you feel about the film that you've seen it?
I feel like it really depicts my youth, because although it is centered about how like the fire had changed us and everything, it really shows like me with my friends and just the high school experience in a different way. So it's really nice to go back and watch that and be able to see myself as a senior in high school, and also just see how I've grown as a person. So that's my favorite thing about watching the film, is just seeing the growth of everybody.
And Kody, you said you haven't watched the film yet. Is that intentional?
I can't bring myself to watch it. I haven't been able to. People have told me about it. My mom's seen it. My dad's seen it. I can't bring myself to watch it. I don't know why.
No, I can imagine.
Also, on that note, like, it's I think really nice definitely for me and Emily to be here with these guys, because we shared lives together for like 4, 5, 6 months, and I really respect that Kody hasn't watched the film in a way. I mean, I would love for him to, and maybe we'll all do that together at some point. But Kody, like everyone else, really opened themselves up to us and really trusted us. And I still have some compunction maybe about whether like our presence with a camera and kind of having them relive some really painful moments. I mean, I think for people who weren't there, it's like it was really traumatic. Like the town is gone overnight, right? That's pretty insane. And one of the things Kody and I did at one point was like go back to his house and walk around, and it's I think a pretty powerful scene in the film. But I also understand that like reliving that, I'm having to re-encounter that. I don't know if I'd want to do that either. So I'm glad we were able to get in some, like, it was really important, I think, for us though, to get in other moments that was not just fire related, because it's like, their lives were like circumscribed by the fire for a little bit, but then, transcended that, over and over. And we're not defined by tragedy. I think all these guys would tell you that. So I'm hopeful the film kind of shows that, but I understand why it's maybe not the type of thing you'd want to get home from work and watch.
Yeah, well, and that's the great thing though about film. It's essentially, it's kind of a permanent record. It's there for whenever you do or don't decide, you want, that maybe there's a time later that it will be a memory you can process. So, so as mentioned before, there have been a few other, there was obviously Ron Howard's documentary about Paradise, Rebuilding Paradise. And, and I've seen several other films about the wildfire situation. Obviously it's become so prominent. But, almost every one of, all of those films were, pretty much filled with pretty dramatic and pretty traumatizing, footage of the actual fires. And one of the things that I was so moved by in this film was, your decision, Derek and Emily, not to do that. There's virtually no, other than in that one scene, with Virginia, where you sort of talk about, the trauma you experience, and there's a tiny flashback, but there's no like it's pretty much devoid of that type of footage. And I'm wondering, can you just talk about that creative decision? Because it was really powerful for me, just, you know, to come to that film. And I was a little bit like, another film about paradise. I don't know if I can sit through that footage again. And it was just a completely different experience.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, that was something early on. We were, you know, aware of these other films being made, and we knew that those films were telling that story. A lot of the day of escaping, and the rebuilding in terms of, you know, what the fire destroyed. And we knew that this was a different film. We're meeting our characters where they are in life and what happens after that point. And you know, with that little scene, we tried to mimic how it might feel with PTSD. It comes unexpectedly in little flashes, but it's not reliving a whole day in totality. And it's really about moving on and who we become after these horrible things happen to us. And so that was something we tried putting in some fire footage in the edit and went back and forth, but it really, you know, that wasn't this film. Those films had been done already.
Yeah.
Derek, do you want to add anything to the fire footage debate?
No, I mean, I think that, yeah, it's a nice instance of like there being, you know, films can complement each other, and the film doesn't need to have everything in it. Because there are discussions like these where, you know, some of the blanks can be filled in for other, you know, people who watch the film and want to know more if like that's what they're interested in. But I don't know. I mean, I am curious from like Virginia, Kody, Harmony, like I think that also came out of just our relationship with them too, in a way. It was just like they had seen lots of flames and I don't think wanted to see them again. And we kind of wanted to like respect kind of like, you know, like knowing that they were going to watch the film at some point, and you know, we want them to like it, obviously. I think that's like a good reflection of like a good relationship too. So I'm curious, like, you know, how you guys felt about that.
I was grateful because I've not been able to watch. I've tried to watch a couple of the films that were out there. There's only one that, other than our film, that I really feel like did a really good job as well, not just creating the trauma again, because I get traumatized with it when I see those flames. Like they'll do news stuff every so often on the anniversary. I've turned it off and walk away. You know, last summer when the fires hit again and the sky went that orange color of the same day, and I was reliving it. I literally curled up in my bed in a fetal position for a while and just had to get back into my body and breathe and realize I'm not in the fire. I'm not there. I'm safe. I'm in a house. There's no fire around me. I had to it was really a rough day. And a lot of my friends who also went through the fire were calling me. I did have a friend who moved to Oregon, and the fire came right up to her house in Oregon after losing everything in Paradise, but it did not burn her house. And so she's still dealing with that trauma. And so I think it's something that unfortunately we're going to have to look at around not just floods, fires, tornadoes, with climate crisis. You know?
Yeah. So, well, I wonder that too, knowing that, go ahead, Harmony.
I was just gonna say that I agree with Partain because it was nice to not see that imagery throughout the film. And when we do, I know like that actual scene where Partain's driving and then it flashes to the fire, and it really does, just like that scene, thinking about it gives me chills. And just knowing also what Partain went through and Kody as well, it's really hard to, you know, reminisce or think about it.
I mean, well, it's interesting the way that you just described that, Virginia, sort of how you sort of managed that trauma in that day, because I was kind of wondering that, you know, knowing that wildfire season is now, you know, it's an annual occurrence. We all know it's coming. You know, how do you prepare and avoid being re-traumatized by it? Are there ways that you sort of manage that?
I've actually learned some techniques for grounding through EMDR, and I use them. I have to use them, but I also have a huge support system of amazing people that I can call, other survivors, other people who understand the trauma, and just that they remind you you're okay, that you're safe. You know, you have to sometimes be reminded that you're not there anymore. This is going to sound weird, but you still have your underwear, Virginia, because I had no underwear when I came off the hill because I had nothing but my cats and a blanket. And so that's become symbolic of I'm okay, I have underwear. So
Harmony or Kody, how have you been knowing obviously we've been through a couple of wildfire seasons since that fire, of how you kind of make it through that?
Does Kody want to go first?
Get myself again.
Yeah.
All right. I'm more of a laid back, go with whatever life's gonna throw at you. So on coping mechanisms, I have none. The reoccurrence of trauma, when it does appear, I just shoo it away. I'm not as hurt as many other people I know after this event. Yeah, it sucked, and I wish it could have gone differently. But in the long run, this fire has shown me more about life than, I'm sorry, Miss Partain could have ever taught me. It's how it is. You just roll with whatever life can throw at you. Life's not going to give you anything that you can't handle. And I've had enough already. I've had 6 open heart surgeries. I've been hit by a car. I watched my best friend's leg get bit off by a shark. This fire is not a whole lot worse.
Wow.
I think in a way, like, I agree with Kody, because I've also been through a lot of trauma. So for me, it was just like another thing to deal with. And although it's made me strong, I like developed a pretty bad anxiety after the fire and just moving on with my life. And I recently started getting therapy, and I just have to really put myself in a position where I don't get that kind of anxiety. And when the fires happened again, because of COVID, I was at San Francisco State, and now I'm back at home, or in Chico. And I live with my boyfriend now. So he was seeing the ash come down, and it was just it was like the same, but also a whole new experience, because this new part of my life was with me going through it again. And he really just, supported me and held me, and he knew it was freaking me out a little bit. But I think just support and therapy has helped me a lot.
So a lot of students, this is part of our education program, and a lot of students that are watching this film are here in Northern California as well, and obviously are also familiar with the threat of wildfires. I'm wondering, based on your experience, if there's anything that you would say to them about how to prepare for the wildfires to come, just in that sense of what you do to prepare, knowing that it's, just even logistically, that if you wish you had known before what you went through.
Listen and prepare your bag. I wish I had had my bag prepared, with all the stuff they say. For me, the most precious items that I owned, I wish I had put in a bag, had ready to go no matter what, because I've lost everything, from my past, all my memories, all my memorabilia. I didn't get to have anything. And there are pictures I can never replicate, and things I will never have again. They're just a blip on my memory. And for me, that would be it, is find those most precious things, have your bag ready to go, enough stuff to survive for a period of time. and also those precious things that you really think about. You think, God, I would never want to lose this.
I agree with Mrs. Partain. You have to have some sort of bag ready, and you've got to be prepared to grab it and go. There's nothing you can do. When that morning happened and I made it down to high school, I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a way out. I rode Ben Fansler's 4Runner from Paradise on the roof all the way up to Magalia. Had him drop me off, and then I ran up to my house. I hot wired my mom's extra car because she had just lost the key a week before. I grabbed one pair of sandals, one blanket, and one pillow. Other than what I had on, that's what I got out with. I lost everything else in that fire. After that, I hot wired that car and I drove to my grandma and I made her pack her stuff. As stubborn and as much as she didn't want to leave, I made her and threw her in the car and drug her out.
The thing is, you're panicked when you're in that situation, and my cat hid, and I was so busy trying to find my cat because I had left the high school and went back home to rescue my cats. So I was behind everybody else. And embers are coming down, it's burning, and I'm panicked, can't find my cat. So when I'm running out the door, this panic is in me. I didn't think to grab anything except a blanket because I thought I might have to sleep in my car. I turned on my sprinklers because I thought they would save my house. Now I know, but it was so ludicrous to turn on your sprinkler. I just, that's how you are. Your mind goes blank in the panic. And I grabbed my students' essays because I wanted them to get into college because, after all, that was more important than my own stuff. And I wish they had said, the days before the wind was blowing, they might evacuate, right? Be prepared. I didn't have the damn bag. I kept saying, oh, I'll do that someday. I'll pack it someday. It's not something to worry about. I'd been evacuated several times. My house hadn't burned. I had that skepticism. And in that moment, the panic takes over and you don't think. I wish I'd put a pair of underwear in my drawer, or my thing at least. But anyway, I know I keep going back to that. There was no underwear by the time I got to the store. So that's why I said that. It's just, I know it sounds weird, but.
No, it's one of those things you take for granted. And then when you don't have it, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Harmony, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just add that I actually grabbed my baby blanket that I've slept with forever and even to this day. And I feel like whenever I have that blanket with me and I'm just touching it, it kind of feels like a piece of home. So I'm really happy I got that out with me.
Emily and Derek, how did it impact your experience? I think probably of the wildfires, not having gone through the fire, but spending this much time with all of them, kind of getting their stories and being immersed in that of how it's maybe shifted or changed your perspective on how you make it through fire season or just prepare for it.
Yeah, I think we learned a lot from them, and I think Paradise is situated in such a tricky position. It was basically one road in, one road out, and you can plan a bag and all that things, but just like how a lot of small towns are built these days, it's really worrying that there isn't a ton of like emergency plans. And so I think, as a state and the West really needs to start thinking better alternatives because, unfortunately, I think the predictions are it's going to keep getting worse. And yeah, I think everyone, lost so much, which is heartbreaking. And I think it's really interesting to see now too, a lot of, thankfully, like a lot of photos are digitized and things like that, but there's still so many things you can't get back. And unfortunately, I don't have a great answer. I don't think anyone really does on how to get that, what we can do better. Derek's been through a couple more fires than I have, so I'm curious what Derek thinks.
Yeah, yeah, because my mom lives in sort of the fire zone as well, so I had been through a version of this beforehand, and then this last summer, Harmony alluded to, and I'm kind of now between the Northern Bay Area and Portland, and I thought moving up to Oregon, I would have kind of escaped some of fire season, but for a week, we were shuttered in our house. Yeah, I guess the one thing I will say, is kind of interesting hearing Harmony, Kody, and Virginia kind of relive a little bit of their experience, and that was kind of when Emily and I first met them and sort of decided that we wanted to follow them for longer. I think we were both just really struck by there was this word resilience gets used a lot, but they truly, I think, all exhibit that, as did their peers and classmates. And I guess I'm really heartbroken and angry that we've all had to live through experiences like these, and they've had severe, intense versions of it. And I think it's just important. With the film, I think we wanted to tell a really microscopic, intimate story, and keep sort of larger context, limited to some ending text card, really, and conversations like these. But this is not this need not be the world that we live in. Yes, fires are inherent to Western landscapes, and they're actually, nature uses fires to regenerate. But what we're seeing is that natural process intensified by, basically human political decisions that have made overdevelopment just a feature of California and Western landscapes. It's made, the drought has contributed to the intensity of these fires. So, it's remarkable that human beings can kind of emerge out of situations as stoically and as gracefully as Harmony, Kody, and Virginia have. But let's not forget that this is the consequence of our relationship with the planet, that is a consequence of a fossil fuel industry that's decided that profits are more important than people's experiences, and that's something that we can change. And we have a corrupt government that chooses not to change that. So that's what I think, and I think that these experiences can be avoided if we want them to be, but right now we're not represented, basically by people who think that. So yeah, I don't know. Because I'm going to have to live with this too. My mom lives in this area. Every summer, I'm anxious. I'm worried about her. My brother and I have to call her and keep, because she lives alone, keep her, up at night when there's evacuation orders happening, so that she stays awake. And it's just this is not how we have to live. But
So what would you say, what would you hope that people would take away from this film? What do you feel like this main message can be, or how, we can use this as a call to action in a sense?
Yeah, I think one of the things I hope viewers take away from this is a bit of solidarity and empathy, and particularly people who have gone through a natural disaster or another traumatic event, that they can feel a bit of a piece of them in this film, that a bit of comfort that they're not alone, and in ways that you can deal with trauma. And I think how Harmony and Virginia talked a lot about therapy and finding support systems, and even kind of we built these confessional scenes interwoven throughout the film that one of the students said felt like a form of therapy. And I think, if we can bring that to other high schools, the ability to really talk about traumatic events when there are fires or something personal at home, the more we talk about it, the less there's a stigma, and hopefully a lot more space for healing and normalizing these emotions that a lot of us keep hidden.
And Virginia, Kody, or Harmony, is there something that you hope others will get from your stories and your experiences from having shared it here?
I would hope teachers, for me as a teacher, I would hope teachers get the importance of the connection to your students and that importance of you are going to be in a time of crisis, you become a bedrock for your students. And you have to still allow yourself to go through your own trauma and get your own help, but that you will be a bedrock for those students, a place for them to land and to be open enough so they can come to you and feel safe to land with you, you know, but to be real with them. You know, one of the things I think the students will admit is I didn't hide what I was going through. I didn't pretend like, oh, I've got this together. I'm so together. I would come and cry sometimes in class, you know, I was real. And I think the more real we are with our students, the more real they can be and the more human we are and the more connected we are. And that to me is what education is about, is that connection, giving people a safe place so that they can explore and learn and ask those questions that sometimes are scary to ask about the world. So that's the educator in me.
Never goes away. Harmony and Kody, do you want to add?
I hope that if there's any high schoolers that enjoy watching, well, I guess not enjoy, but that do watch this, I hope they don't get scared from it. I mean, any natural disaster that comes your way is going to be horrible, but you're going to be able to get through it. There's nothing that, like I said, there's nothing life won't hand you that you can't handle.
Nice. Harmony?
I was just gonna say, with the film, I hope that people pay more attention to these disasters and, you know, kind of look into why they are happening more often and what they can do on like a personal scale to help this from not happening as much as it is. But I also personally hope when people watch the film, they can see someone like me, you know, continue to pursue their goals even after, you know, so much trauma, because without that, there's nothing. So yeah, I guess just to keep pursuing what they want to do.
Great. So just what's the situation in Paradise now? And I'm wondering also obviously before the pandemic hit, had students returned to Paradise High knowing, you know, the school's intact? Is the school actually functioning?
The school's back functioning, but it's very small. The town is slowly rebuilding, but very small. You know, they don't have the numbers. You know, we went from a large town to a very small town. I'm just down the hill from there. I'm not going to rebuild. I don't want to be 80 and try and escape a fire again. But their numbers have gone way down. So the student population is very small, but they've been doing the hybrid education. I'm still in touch with everybody teaching there. And so, but the numbers won't ever look, it'll take years before it looks like how it did with us. So, and it's a junior senior high school now. They brought the junior high school over, and we went from about 1,600 students. It's now 400 junior senior high. Yeah.
The town itself is doing pretty good on coming back. Every single day I see mobile homes being brought up. I work on a frame crew, so I build houses up here for a living. We're working on 2 really big $800,000 houses. So there is progress in Magalia, and we're not the only crew doing lots of work. So it's good to see that there are buildings coming back. There are many people coming back, but the schools have taken a big hit.
And Harmony, are you back in that area? I mean, you said you're back home in, I think, in Chico, right?
Yeah, I'm back in Chico, and you know, I keep in touch with a lot of my close friends here, and some of them rebuilt. My friend Kaylee, she rebuilt and is living back in Paradise, and she's really happy and doing well there. And my aunt still lives in Magalia, so like I still have a lot of connections to the town, but personally, I don't see myself ever, you know, coming back to even Butte County. But you know, it's just hard. I feel like it's when I first came back from college when I came back home, it was just really hard to just be in Chico because it didn't feel like home. It just felt I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah, well, I wonder how this whole experience has changed your perspective on what home is.
Definitely. Home is where the family is. I don't know. That's it.
Home is where my cats are. Seriously. It's all this
I like that one.
all this stuff that I've accumulated since the fire, because a lot of people are very generous. I just look at it and I try and not be attached to it because I know it could go away tomorrow. And so I have this weird relationship with stuff now. I give a lot of stuff away. I do a lot of art and I just give it away because I have a weird relationship now with that whole thing because it feels so we always hear people speak about, nothing's permanent, but there's this other part of us as humans that we think our stuff is permanent and it's not. And so for me, it's wherever my cats and I are, that becomes home.
Derek, did you want to answer?
Well, I just think that's a really cool sentiment that kind of like maybe didn't find its way into the film as much, but and I really think everyone's sort of takeaway of what this film means is like it's far better articulated than Emily and I can ask that question a lot, and I really struggle with like exactly how to answer it because I'm politically motivated, but this is a small intimate film, and I do think it's about reconnecting us with ourselves and authentic versions of ourselves, because if we can do that, we're a really powerful force, and like we do have so much more in common as human beings, despite what we're told by people in power who are incentivized to distract us from that reality. But I just love that idea of like, and maybe to Kody's sort of, I think everyone here had a different perspective on the fire, which was like, which we liked, kind of creating that constellation in the film, different responses to the same event. But I sort of see what Virginia just said, kind of what Kody's takeaway and resilience being is, maybe these things do have the, in a positive way, they remind us of, take us away from a bit of a consumerist, materialistic mindset and get us closer to something that's more eternal, and that is our relationships and our art, whatever form that takes. So I just, maybe that's the next film that we'll make about these guys. I don't know, but that was beautiful.
Well, thank you. It's just been such a pleasure to talking to all of you. I know we ran a little bit long, but I could kind of have this conversation longer. I really appreciate you sharing your stories and your experiences, and Emily and Derek for putting this film together. I just think it's really powerful for all of us who are constantly facing this situation, in our communities, and just to see what you guys have come through and your resilience and the way you've managed it is really inspiring. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about it. So thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you everyone for coming to be part of this conversation today too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to see everybody.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, it's been so long.